Life could be a dream. Do, 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 shaboom.
Hey guys, have you wondered about how stable your financial future actually is? Where's my money going? Where can I invest it? What are the best options for my monthly income? We all like to think that these apps and books serve us well in the world of investing, but it's time to be a responsible adult and realize you're not Warren Buffett. My next episode will be with local financial advisor, planner, Gavin Taylor with North Florida Financial. Gavin doesn't just advise me on where and when to put my money, but also look out for my family's financial future, just in case I decide to take a rad shortcut on my Harley and meet Jesus early. Stay tuned for the next episode and feel free to reach out for more information.
It works out for them in the end, right? The same way with credit card companies, right? That's the argument with credit cards. If you only use a credit card for the absolute necessities and you pay it off at the end of every month and you are disciplined as the day is long, credit cards are great. But if that ever for the people that bleed over into buying an extra couple $100 monthly because the credit card's so easy to use, credit card company wins. Yeah. But
they know that it's there.
That's the thing about the argument when like Dave Ramsey gets on his high horse about credit cards. He's right. Like it works on our psychology of it's so easy to use. So when we use it and we have the potential to spend more because it's so easy to use.
So what about what are your thoughts on that guy? I think his last name is Yang. He wrote Rich Dad Poor Dad.
Oh, Rich Dad Poor Dad. Kiyosaki.
Yes.
Robert Kiyosaki, I think.
Yeah.
So he's we read that book close to the same time. I thought that was really interesting. And it's been a while since I've read it. He's all about utilizing debt. Yeah. He's all about using mortgage debt, right? Yeah. He's a massive real estate guy, right? Yeah. He's all about turning and flipping houses and using the rent to pay off and that works in like massive scale for people who have the stomach to take on that kind of risk. Because I mean, what they're talking about is using leverage. Yeah. Using leverage out the absolute
it's a very, very common misconception, and I think it's great that I got somebody on to talk about it. I'm going to interrupt you for a brief second because a lot of my friends that I know, they'll listen to some bullcrap like this, and then they're like, I read this book, and this guy told me how I needed to become a millionaire. And they're like, I'm just going to go out, I'm just going to rack up, I'm going to use the bank's money. I'm not going to use my money. And it's like, listen, there's a lot of risk that a lot of people use out there, and that worked for them, and they were successful at it, but that does not mean that that is going to work for you. Even if you followed their same exact playbook, that person thinks differently than you do. This does not work for everybody, and people have lost their entire life over these, anyway, getting back to what you were saying, I'm sorry.
No, you're absolutely right. And it's once again, everybody, what I feel is the common thread of people that want to jump on these ideas, right? They read XYZ book.
Trying to get rich quick.
Right. Get rich quick, whatever. But everybody believes that they're going to be the survivor. They're going to be the exception to the rule, right? Yeah. And that's why you have all these arguments about credit cards and about buying and flipping houses or building your rental real estate empire. And all of these scenarios, they're always the hero to the story, right? That in their vision of 5 years in the future, I read this book, I'm going to implement it exactly this way, because this guy did it. And the fact of the matter is, it's kind of what you would think of, I guess is probably the term is survivor bias. Yeah. Right? XYZ person did do this. They successfully pulled it off. And now they've written a book about it. But it's now 20 years later. So society has changed. Right. The book got published, whatever. And it's the thing is, the thing that you have to caveat is like, you're right. They did it, right? They were successful at it. They probably wouldn't be writing a book if they weren't. Yeah. There's plenty of people that probably weren't successful that wrote a book and they're making a little bit of money somehow. But they did it. It doesn't mean the societal situation is all the same.
Yeah.
Right? The deals that they came across, chances are you probably aren't going to see the exact same deals, right? I was able to buy an apartment complex for $300,000 that had 50 rooms in it, and I flipped it for $3 million. Okay, good for you.
Yeah.
Those aren't on every corner, right? And so there's all these factors, but ultimately the plans that people, when they're looking to get rich quick, or something that sounds, what's the saying? If it sounds too good to be true, it probably is.
Yeah.
It's like you said, it's high risk.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to work for 5% of the people that try it.
Mm-hmm.
And the other 95% of people that drink the Kool-Aid are either going to fail trying, or they're going to just, they're gonna stick to it because they read the book or whatever it was, however it goes to it. But
well, how many of those books have you read though? I know you have read a ton, but like, think about it. There's a book that's coming out with some new millionaire every freaking
absolutely.
day, and now they've even, I don't know if you pay much attention to like social media, but I mean, you got like Andrew Tate, you got some of these guys that are coming out with like these different, like, oh, go to my website and I'll teach you how to get rich. I'll teach you how to get a business started, a little hustle.
Grant Cardone all over the place.
Yeah, God. And I used to be a Grant Cardone like nerd, man.
Oh, really?
Oh, dude, I was all about Grant Cardone. When I started selling cars at Bill Kramer Chevrolet, they bought the Grant Cardone like package, so you could actually go to your computer and you could type in a scenario that you're having with a client or a customer, and he would basically tell you what you needed to say as far as like word tracks and stuff like that.
Interesting.
It is a very interesting way of doing it. The thing that I like about Grant's, like his sales and how he does stuff, is it is using logical principle to put in front of somebody to make a sale.
Okay.
Again, though, you're still pushing someone into purchasing something that they probably shouldn't. Jordan Belfort came out with his straight line persuasion system after he got out of prison.
There's some irony there, I think.
Anyway, the straight line... The straight line persuasion sales system that he came up with was a lot of siphoning your clientele to understand what the needs versus rewards were for your company or for your client.
Okay.
So you actually were able to use it in an ethical way. So don't try to sell somebody something that you know that they don't need nor they want, because you're not going to make as much money off of somebody that you will. That actually wants what you want. Now, It comes down to selling it on the fact of whether or not, but you can sell somebody on something and realize it's not right for them.
Sure.
And the straight line the straight line persuasion that he did or whatever was basically giving enough time to sell the opportunity to somebody and then realize whether or not it was something that they could utilize or benefit. Right?
Yeah.
And then if you got like a hard no from somebody, you're like, yeah, it's not right for them, and you need to back off. The Grant Cardone system is just you keep pushing them until they hang up the phone. You just keep pushing them until they leave the dealership, and which is like high pressured sales tactics, which you would think that you're going to get the opposite out of both guys. You would think that the Wolf of Wall Street, you would be getting the guy that is like what you see in the movie, which is like, buy or die. Versus Grant Cardone, which is a self-made guy that got there by ethical standpoint, by never breaking the law. You would think that it would be flip-flopped, but it's not. So anyway, it's a little off topic, but on topic. But getting back to the original question, guys go out and buy these books. They live on social media. They watch these guys. Sure. They can mimic these guys like very, very well.
Oh, I'm
and
sure.
Then they still lose their butts. And it's just like one of those things where it's like, man, quit trying to do something. Like if it was easy and if it were something that worked, everybody would be doing it. But how many clients would you say you get that have these types of ideas where they come in and they're like, they think that they're smarter than you, where it's like, oh, I read this book. I know how my investments need to work. Do you even get that?
I haven't had a lot of that, and I think that has to do with how we position ourselves. Because if somebody has a 20-minute conversation with me, they understand how we're going to do holistic financial planning. We're going to be a little more steady Eddie. You know, if they're the type you're talking about, we're probably not a good fit, right? They're not gonna all of a sudden see the light because of a 20-minute. They're gonna say, well, this guy is talking about something that sounds like it's going to take a whole lot longer than what XYZ fill in the blank course or book that I read that I've got the impression I'm going to be able to do this in 2 years. I'm going to do the 2-year option. And so they're going to go on their way and no hard feelings, right? That's their choice. And the fact of the matter is there's a lot of paths to wealth. That's the other thing. There's nothing saying that they do their 2-year scenario and it actually works out and they are that exception to the rule. They do. Good for you, you know? Good on you. But for the one person that does it, I can tell you there's a laundry list of 1,000 other people that tried it and it didn't work out. And ultimately it comes, like you said, it comes down to risk. We take a lot of risk. Can't get away from taking risk, right? That's just a fact of life. But man, make it measured, right? Right? Know your limitations on risk instead of going all in because you got on whatever hype train and now you've lost your shirt because of XYZ scenario. I find this to be particularly, it shows up quite a bit when you think about, it's a financial advisor, people show up and they start talking to you and they've got whatever preconceived notion about what we do. And for the financial advisor that they make their living on saying, hey, so-and-so can make you 10% a year. Well, I can make you 13% a year. What do you say? Sign on the dotted line. And I would say there's definitely advisors out there that can do better than others. We've got clients that are very happy with the returns they've gotten and everything else. But if my whole plan, my whole selling point, which it's not, but if it were, if my whole selling point were just on, well, the other guy gets you 10%, I'll get you 12%.
Yeah.
Number one, I'm going to be dime a dozen, right? Because everybody's making that claim in one way or another.
Jeez, man, you're lying.
In one fashion or another, they're making that claim. But I don't find that to be a very good proposition because the scenario that I often think of when I'm talking to folks is, okay, let's say so-and-so gets you 12%. Let's say they can get you 2 extra %.
What time are you trying to be out of here by?
6:30.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Sorry,
we're
my
good.
bad. Okay.
No worries. But let's say that, XYZ advisor is going to get you 2% more. All they're doing is investing your money. That's great. And this financial plan that they lay out for you says that in 20 years, if you invest with me for 20 years and I get you this return, you're going to be a multiple millionaire by the time you retire. Great. Fantastic. And that's all they talk to you about.
Yeah.
And then 6 months down the road, you have a car wreck. And that income that you were counting on to put into that investment account to do that financial plan that he was talking about, all of that goes out the window 6 months in. And it's because it was a singularly focused financial plan. All it was talking about is investing, which is pretty typical. It's not that they're doing it wrong. It's not even that they're malicious. It's just not taking the full picture into account. It's having added risk that can be mitigated, right? It can be taken care of. And so that's when I talk about that. And if I were to talk to somebody that's read XYZ book, they're not thinking that way.
No.
They're thinking, well, in 2 years, I do the nose to the grindstone and I just burn the candle at both ends. I'll sleep when I'm dead, whatever. And I do this. In 2 years, I'm awesome. I'm, sky's the limit.
And then what's so funny about it is it's one of those things that even the guys that do end up doing those types of things, they go and they spend their money on dumb shit or dumb stuff, right? Like
Sometimes.
they'll sit there and, I bought a Ferrari. I bought a house over in Sweet Bay. I did this. I know a guy here recently, and he, oh my God, worked his tail off as far as like investing and stuff like that. And he's working a pretty decent like job, and like he got made a crap ton of money off of Bitcoin.
Oh, yeah.
Made a lot of money. Sold all of it. What do you think he did with the $76,000 that he made off of Bitcoin?
It didn't save it for taxes, I'm sure.
Nope, he went out and bought a new vet with it. Paid cash. You went out, you got, and listen, man, dude, it's your money. You do whatever you want with it. But it's the whole thing of, you made $76,000. You are a project manager that makes probably $70,000 a year. Your wife, makes pretty decent money. Together, you probably make $130 to $140 a year. You live in Sweet Bay, which means you've got a pretty high mortgage.
Most likely.
And you just made 70 some odd K, which is one salary for you.
A 1 year salary.
You went out and you bought a car. Something that's going to lose value. It lost about $7,000 the minute that you drove it off the lot.
I believe it.
Just so you could say that you're running with the Joneses now and have this car. But, dude, if I had, we've talked about options, like if we had like a chunk of change to like invest it.
Right.
What could happen with that type of money over a certain amount of time? And I was sitting there thinking about it because it was shortly after me and you started talking, and we started going through you for our financials. But I was like, dang, dude, I can't imagine what Gavin could do with somebody like that. Because like that dude would be so much better off talking with somebody that knows what they're talking about with money and be like, yeah, that car may go. Do you know how many businesses he could have bought with that? That would have been making him that kind of money right off the bat. Like, I mean, there's tons of stuff, and it's like, dude, I see those types of things happen. It's like, I haven't had anything happen to where I come across that kind of money all at one time. But if I did, I know that I wouldn't go out and buy a freaking car with it.
That's a really good analogy for finances that I use every now and then. Well, when you think about it, if I were to typify my financial life as a car, dead serious, my financial life is going to be a Toyota Corolla.
Yeah.
It's going to last me 300,000 miles, or a Toyota Tacoma. I drive a Toyota Tacoma. It's a 2008. It's 2024 right now. It's an old truck. I love it. And I'm going to drive it till the wheels fall off. And chances are the wheels aren't going to fall off until probably 400,000 miles, right? It's one of those trucks that's just dependable as the day is long. But if you talk about a car, I want a Toyota Corolla that's going to last me until my kids are probably graduated from college, right? That's the kind of longevity I want out of my financial life. Now, my financial life could also be a Ferrari or a BMW or fill-in-the-blank supercar. It's going to be great. I can run it hot and fast, but the chances of it breaking down are a lot more. And when it does break out, the cost to fix it is going to be 10 times what I would have to charge to fix that Toyota Corolla. The maintenance on it's lower. It's easier. I don't go as fast, right? I'm not going to be pushing 120 in my Toyota Corolla. But man, the longevity of that thing is going to be so much better than my financial life as a Ferrari owner or whatever it is, And I feel like people want to do that nowadays. They see a lot of comparison. Talk about the people you said the people living on social media. That's a problem in and of itself, because you see all the people that the only thing they're going to post on social media is the great stuff, right? Nobody ever posts the normal less than rosy scenario. Yeah. Hey, my kids weren't so great today at school and we had to get called to the principal's office. No, my kid's a grade A student. They got perfect attendance this year. Whatever it is, we got to do our vacation in the Bahamas this year. Instead of talking about, well, it cost me 80 hours a week for 5 weeks to pay for that vacation, right? There's two sides to every story. And so we have to be comparison about the fact that comparison is the thief of joy. And so if we're going to live off of that.
And I see that happen so much with gear. And the only reason why people buy stuff nowadays is for the name recognition and stuff like that. And I
feel like not only the expensive side, right? We certainly come to say that expensive means better in a lot of scenarios. And, you get what you pay for. And in a lot of cases, that's true, right? That's not a blanket statement that is not correct. But I think what a lot of people also run into, especially when it comes to, I won't say just finances, but finances as well, is they like complication. They think that complication makes it more exotic, right? So, and the more exotic it is, the better it must be. Like, surely this is what's going on. You said you were talking about a novice shooter. I would guess by that description, even if they showed up to the range with XYZ super expensive gun, if you two are on the firing line, you're hitting 10 out of 10. He's hitting 3 out of 10, right? Some kind of scenario like that as far as skill, right? And so it could also be argued that someone that is more experienced would get better use out of the exotic than the novice at the same time. Yeah. Right? Mm-hmm. And so by that same scenario, some of these books, a lot of times they keep going to books and courses or whatever, but that's what we're seeing a lot of times, is the exotic gets our attention, but the people's attention that it usually gets is the novice. Yeah. Right? It's not getting it's like the shooting expert is like, all right, yeah, that gun's $9,000. I like my $500 gun just fine. I know how to oil it. I know how it shoots. I know how it pulls to the left or the right. I know how to hit a bullseye at 300 yards every time with this gun, and I don't care that it's only $500.
I don't think you're going to find a long range rifle for $500, but
you understand the point, Ron.
Yeah. if you find a gun that's able to touch, over $1,000, over $1,000 with $500, and you're pretty accurate, you let me know. I will come and purchase it off of you.
Right, but ultimately the price point isn't the intent. It's the skill and the experience that allows you to utilize it. And the crazy part is, all right, let's say it's $1,000 rifle with $1,000 optic. Okay, you got to get your Leopold or whatever it is on there with the nice sights, the nice mount, everything else. But you get your, let's call it bottom of the rung long range rifle, and then you get your specced out Gucci top of the line rifle. You tell me. You come to that point, you have money for both of them. Yeah. How many times are you going to buy the $10,000 rifle, or are you going to buy the $2,000 rifle? Because at the end of the day, they're 95% just as good either direction. I mean, is that a valid scenario with rifles at that price point? Call it 80%, whatever the number is.
Yeah. I mean, I've been to several layouts where I've looked at other shooters and looked at their stuff and seen how much money. I mean, I could pretty much look at something now and I pretty much know what they're dealing with. And
right.
I can look at it and be like, oh yeah, you got about a $6,000, $7,000 setup versus
right.
And sometimes, I know a guy with like a $13,000 setup right now, and that's between glass and everything. And really they get higher than that if you really wanted to start getting into some.
Sure.
But I mean, that's probably one of the guys that I hang out with. I mean, that's one of the highest priced things that I've kind of seen, and it's a lot of it's built and it works for him. But as soon as I get behind it, it's not my thing. And it's just there's tons of money behind it, and I would still take my 300 Win Mag over that, and I'm still able to plink at 1,100 yards. So
right.
I mean, but he's got well, no, I mean you're pretty much right. But if you looked at it from the basic point of view of like this is how people look at finances in their life, that's actually a good way of looking at it, because a lot of people want these lavish things and these things that are just out there as far as expensive, and then you have it, and then sometimes you wish you had something that was
it's that buyer's remorse we were talking about earlier.
Well, it's like the freaking I spent I spent over $30,000 on my last Ducati, right? I had a Ducati Panigale V2, and freaking you talk about the Honda CBR, half the price.
Really?
Freaking suck my headlights out of my bike. I went riding with a couple of buddies of mine. Actually, a couple of these guys were sheriff's deputies, but we went over to a Red Bar over in Grayton Beach. It was a couple of years ago. And I rode with a couple dudes there, and they were all super nice guys. And we all rode Ducatis and, pretty much anything crotch rocket sport bike.
Yeah.
And one of the guys, dude, he was on a CBR. Probably shouldn't say. I was going, I'm not going to give you the exact speed. I was going well over 130. And on 98, there in between Rosemary Beach and Grayton Beach, and I mean I was booking it like I had stomped on it pretty good. I was going well over 130, and that bike passed me like I wasn't moving.
That's crazy.
Now I wasn't topped out. I was a little bit nervous of pushing where I was at already,
right?
And I just didn't want it because you start to get the shakes, like the bike will start to and he just like. But anyway, the point being is that bike nowhere near the type of money that I spent. And it's like, oh, well, you're just a Ducati. Like, that's supposed to live up to its name. Like, 130 was starting to, I mean, that's on that bike, I mean, that bike's a 195, 190 mile an hour bike. That's about what that CBR was pushing when it went past me like I wasn't, like I said, it passed me like I was not moving.
That's crazy.
A great guy that was riding, but I mean, I'm just like, dude, showed me up like a mofo. Like I thought I was like, man, because it was a brand new bike, and I was like, man, none of these guys gonna be able to. I get on sport mode, and I'm freaking just sitting there burning it, bro. And this guy comes out of nowhere, and I'm like, what? Like I laid off the throttle and like slowed down, and I'm like, I'm gonna go back to 65 miles an hour just because it's like, and then. I said to that guy when we got over to Grayton Beach, I was like, dude, you passed me like I wasn't even moving. He's like, yeah, I was going about 180. And I was just like, nah, because the faster I always got on my bike, I started like seeing like pictures of my kids, my wife, everything. And it's like, yeah, no, and I'm married, and I've got a mortgage, and I just need to pull over and get into a parking lot and be like, I need to put this thing up for sale because it's just too much power.
Too much. Yeah. You ever watch that movie, The Last Indian?
Oh, with what's his name?
Dustin Hoffman? No.
It's
Anthony Hopkins.
Anthony Hopkins. Yes.
That's what that makes me think of. Which I'm not a bike guy, but I loved the movie. It was awesome.
Yeah, I'm not buying bikes like that.
Well, he built that one.
Yeah,
he's just like.
I've got a hyper motard that I'm working on right now that I'm pretty sure that I'm gonna end up. Yeah, another Ducati, but other than that, I've got the Harley, and that keeps me where I need to be, and so.
Hey.
It's just a nice little, hey man, and believe it or not, I mean Harleys are that name brand thing. That's just kind of like I got my life insurance policy through you now.
That's good.
Actually, so getting back on that, so what are all of the things that you offer as far as what your firm does?
Okay, so what we do is we do holistic financial planning, and so the way that I tend to describe it to people is. In your financial life, if you were to take a snapshot of all the things that affect your life, and you put all those things in a basket, all of those things are puzzle pieces that end up affecting the bottom line, which is your net worth, really. You know, how much you're worth at the end of the day, your ability to retire, all that kind of stuff. And so you've got folks like your property and casualty insurance, right? Your State Farm agent, your Allstate guy who gets your house insurance, your car insurance, your motorcycle insurance. You've got a life insurance guy. You've got a mutual fund manager if you deal with retirement accounts. If you buy and sell a house, you're dealing with a real estate agent. You've got attorneys when you do like wills and estate documents and trusts. You got accountants that help you do your taxes. You got stockbrokers if you do investing. You do bankers if you get loans, right? All of these folks affect your financial life. And today, you might know 5 of them. You might know 8 of them. You might have all 9 of them on your Rolodex. Like you might know all of them speed dial on your phone.
A Rolodex.
Yeah. Old school, I know. But all of those people affect your financial life in one way or the other. And the question that we always ask is, how often do all of those people sit around a round table and talk about you in a given year? And the answer is, unless you have millions and millions and millions of dollars and have all those people on payroll, they never sit in the same room, right? They always do things in a vacuum. They don't do it poorly. I'm sure they do the best job given the information they've been provided, but they do it in a vacuum. They are specialists in XYZ particular financial product or instrument, a mortgage, buying and selling a house, setting up a will, or setting up estate documents. They're all experts in their field. They're all micromanagers, if you will, which leaves you as the macro manager. You have to make those decisions to assess, well, this property and casualty insurance, my State Farm guy gave me this policy based on the Kelly Blue Book value of my car, the Zillow estimate on my house. These estimates seem about right, so I'm going to consider that a check in the box, put it in the safe, have the document when I need it, and I go on about my business. And a couple years later, you pick up another policy or another product or another document, whatever it is, as the complexity grows, as we come into adulthood and closer to retirement. And so as that complexity grows, whether we recognize it or not, the interconnections among those puzzle pieces grows as well. It can get very complex. And if those individuals that are providing you these services or these products or what have you, if they're not talking, there's a pretty good chance that those puzzle pieces aren't going to fit together quite right. There's going to be gaps. There's going to be holes. And if we do find a way to finagle it together just right, the picture might not be what we want it to be. If we put the puzzle together and we step back and look at it, it's like, I'm not sure I like that picture. And so what we do as a financial firm is, yes, we invest money. We do it very well. We deal with things like life insurance, disability insurance. But at the end of the day, we help coordinate all of those individuals. Now, we don't get them in the room, but we do a deep dive when we meet with our clients, especially on the initial basis and then on the annual reviews. We've got a laundry list of things we go through. Because like I said earlier, I'm not interested in making the case to you, hey, Ron, if you and your wife invest with me, I'm going to get you 2% better than the other guy and send you on your way, and you get in an accident 3 months from now. Well, that financial plan's out the window because you don't have income coming into the house. If you've passed away, your income's never coming back. And now your wife has to deal with the pieces that are left. And I'm going to be over here saying, well, my financial plan, all I was going to do was invest money for you. The income's gone. That financial plan, I'm sorry, it's just not going to work anymore. Yeah. If that's the only conversation we've had, that's not going to be a good conversation for your widow, or if you're still here and you're disabled, your wife taking care of a disabled husband or whatever the scenario is. Yeah. That's a financial plan that has holes in it. That's a financial plan that has unmitigated risk, right? There's too much risk there. I'm not comfortable having that conversation. And the fact is, I'm not going to have that conversation with you because we're instead going to assess it from what we call a protection first standpoint. I want to make sure that not only are we setting you on the path for success, for future success, but I want to either make sure you get there, or if God forbid you're not there or your wife's not there and that income has changed between now and then, I want to make it so that your family has the ability to pick up the pieces and keep going. Yeah. Because the thing that in my mind, one of the things that I just absolutely don't want. Now, whatever God has in store for me for my future, that's up to him. But if I'm to not be here at some point, right? If I leave early, right? And my wife and my kids now have to deal with the repercussions, I can leave them in 3 different ways. I can leave them financially, I can leave them worse off than when I was here. I can leave them roughly neutral, or I can leave them in a better position than when I had them, than when I was here. Now, they'd be worse off if I built up a bunch of debt. We were living paycheck to paycheck, and when I pass away, my paycheck's gone, and whatever we've got in the bank, hope that covers it. That's one option. In the middle, we can have no debt, but we're making ends meet. Maybe we're getting a little bit saved, and when I pass away, I don't leave her with a bunch of debt, but now she's got to find the job to pay for the kids, put them in school, get daycare, whatever. But I can instead set them for success. I can set that bar higher by doing the things today while I'm still here. I can set things in process and in motion that give them a greater opportunity to thrive. Yeah. And that's important. And I think I don't think you're ever going to talk to any parent and them not agree to that, right? That's a no-brainer. Yeah. Yeah. But the way that we choose to do that is we look at the whole economic value of the client's life, or really of the family's life, right? The husband and wife, the two spouses, understanding that even if there's a single breadwinner, that, stay-at-home mom or stay-at-home dad still brings economic value into that home, and that needs to be considered. That's, there's lots of conversations to have, and it's conversations that we either don't think to have, or we assume it's covered, right? We as complexity builds, and we get busy, and we do the convenient thing, and we get to this point, and lo and behold, catastrophe strikes. And lo and behold, these decisions, while they made sense in the moment, they get here and the rubber meets the road, and I didn't think about that. I didn't think about this or that. And because I didn't think about it, now I or my family left behind, they have to now contend with it because it was something we just didn't plan for. We work to remove the what ifs. Now, that doesn't mean I'm going to guarantee you have a certain amount of money by the time you retire. Like, I can't guarantee returns or anything like that. Nobody, if somebody does, you need to run away, right? Report them to the SEC and then run away, right? Because guarantees, and they don't happen, right? There's risk, there's things involved, but there are ways to mitigate that risk sufficiently so that you have a high probability and a high confidence level that the success that we're hoping for, and we can see that light at the end of the tunnel. I see if I do the right things, right? I do the right daily buying decisions, and I keep the discipline, and I have my plan, and I stick to my plan, and me and my spouse are on the same page. All the things work out. I see that goal there at the end. Between here and there, if I do all the discipline, I can be confident in the result. We have to make sure that we understand the risks that are involved that might prevent us from getting to that end point. Yeah. And when we accurately prepare for those risks and mitigate them, we've got a lot of happy clients, and it makes those conversations when catastrophe does strike a lot easier. Yeah. And that's the biggest deal.
Let's talk a little bit about government overreach into our money.
Government, okay.
Taxes. I think obviously being a financial advisor, you probably see this a lot. But how tax can really eat up somebody, even with life insurance policies. Maybe not life insurance policies. You don't have to worry about it.
No taxes there.
No, but capital. What isn't there, like when somebody passes on? Because we've had these conversations before on how much tax there is on stuff that I would actually leave behind. It's actually quite a bit.
Right. So there's inheritance taxes, and
do you agree with that? You're like, dude, I'm American. I don't agree with taxes anyway. But
I don't agree with. I don't think I would ever want somebody to take money that I've earned, and I would like for my kids to get all of it. Yeah. As far as agreeing with it, I mean, obviously there's
it's a thing whether or not you agree with it or not.
Right, exactly. It doesn't matter if I agree with it or not. I can't exactly change it. So you're absolutely right. When we're talking about leaving money to our kids, doing that generational wealth, passing money on to the next generation, there's inheritance tax that comes into play. There's a consideration.
But capital gains tax is like 33.3%, right? 30%.
No, it depends on a lot of factors. Depends on how long you've held a particular investment. It depends on what your current earnings are in the year that you take those taxes. Like there's
so I'll give you an example.
Go for it.
And this is the reason why it's important for people to actually invest their money like you're talking about. So I got some family where the crap, I think it was an aunt. No. Yes. Aunt passed away. Her husband, great uncle or whatever, kept all of his money in a safe.
Okay.
He didn't invest it with banks. He didn't keep it in the banks. When he got paid, because he was a carpenter most of his life, and he made decent money because he built homes, contractor.
Right.
So when he went and cashed checks, he put cash in his safe at home.
Okay.
So he was already taxed on it when he got paid. He was already taxed.
Right.
So he comes home and he stacks this freaking safe up. And it was like pretty much all cash.
Wow.
Hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars. Hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars. Not just like, 50 grand, 60 grand. Like you're talking hundreds of thousands. He had in there, stored up for a very long time. Guys, both sons go and they're like, okay, we need to crack open the safe. Don't know what's in it. They didn't know that there was so much cash stashed in there. Their mom kept telling them, the aunt was like, oh, no, there's money in there. I don't know how much, but he used to stack like tons of money in there.
Yeah.
So probate and all that bull crap. You got to wait for everything to clear. The attorney has to be there when the safe is opened. All this bull crap. And they come in and then it's like, oh, well, you have to pay taxes on this. And it's like, wait a second. It's already been taxed. Why do you have to tax it again? And they're like, oh, well, because you didn't earn it. My dad did. The government comes in and they do these types of things where they'll come in and they'll tax somebody again and again and again. Our taxes are taxed pretty much most of the time. So this is one of the reasons why if he would have actually invested his money, but he didn't trust banks, he didn't trust things like that. Which, I mean, can you blame him? It's probably somebody that he was somebody that was born during the Great Depression, so he had heard stories from his parents. But it's kind of crazy when you start to think about that. It is good to have those regular. I mean, I got family members that are still like, oh, I've got thousands and thousands of dollars in my safe. And I'm like, you need to make sure that, when you start to have a little bit of a cough, know who's got access to it and get rid of it, because the government's going to come in and they're going to decide what to do with it, and it's not going to be a pretty sight.
Yeah.
That's the reason why investing in things like what you're talking about, you don't have to worry about extra stupid crap. You're already aware of whatever's going to happen with it.
Yeah, and like I said, whether I agree with it or not, taxes are like what are the two inevitable things in life? Death and taxes.
You don't have a say. I just was curious on, like, what I would like to know where that money goes.
So would I.
Like this money that they're taking off of inheritance tax. What fund does that go in? And especially with something like that, money that's already been taxed, now you're going to tax it again, and then you're that's thievery at that point. That's not even taxes. You stole that. No. It's one thing to say, hey, property taxes, and this is going to go towards, X, Y, Z.
Right.
It's another thing to say, well, I'm just going to take this because, you didn't earn it. You're just happy to get a piece anyway, right? So.
Now, I will say with that is there are ways to set yourself up and your heirs up for, at this point, it's minimal tax, right? There are ways to do it. But if you don't like the government taking your money, I'm not going to be able to ever make you completely happy, because they're going to find a way. But there are avenues that you can build up assets that will pass to your children, or in some cases you can gift it to your kids, and you can avoid taxes in some cases, or at least minimize the taxes.
Yeah.
There are a lot of ways to do it. We could take 3 hours to talk about the different ways you could do it. It's going to be specific to certain situations, but suffice it to know that there are ways to do it. There are ways to grow money tax free, and that they're available. They're not necessarily right for everybody based on income levels and everything else, right?
Yeah.
In some cases, some options are more expensive than others. You can invest in tax advantaged things, right? Like special opportunity funds, but a lot of that's reserved for.
A lot of this stuff holds people back because of the tax aspect. A lot of times.
Sure.
That's the only reason why I brought that up, because it's like, how heavily regulate. I mean, obviously we got insider trading going on everywhere nowadays in the United States. I mean, but it's kind of like one of those things where, hearing from a financial advisor, how much does the government actually stand in the way of wealth management on everyday individuals?
That's a good question. And with everything, I think there's two sides to the coin. Just because there have been, we talked about Wolf of Wall Street earlier, there have been lots of bad actors in the stock market and in financial circles, and in the stock market in particular, because the numbers just grow exponentially, right? The commas and the extra zeros behind the numbers, when they expand, people come out of the woodwork to find ways to get at that money. I mean, it's like was it flies to honey or whatever. It's they're attracted to it in a way that there's lots of bad actors, and so there's absolutely regulation that makes sense.
Yeah,
like there's regulation out there that's like, that makes sense why you would have that, because I would be worried about my grandmother talking to this person after hearing what they did, and now they're in jail for fraud. Right? There are plenty of people out there that are that way, and the result is increased government regulation. Now, with all things, there's unintended consequences of that regulation, good and bad, right? There's things that make it a headache for certain people to do business certain ways, and they may be perfectly honest in their intentions, but the regulation's a regulation. And particularly when government regulators put stamps of thou shalt on this blanket scenario, there's always going to be people that were doing right the whole time that are now going to have a more difficult time to do it. And there were people that were not doing right that are being stopped, right? There's both sides to it. From the wealth management side and the passing of generational wealth, there's plenty of taxes like we've talked about. There's things that are in discussion now. I mean, we're just before the 2024 election. There's discussions about removing what's called stepped up cost basis. And it's similar to what you were talking about, handing down from a parent to a child, or to a grandparent to a grandchild, whatever it is. And essentially, I could spend my days saving for retirement, or whatever I'm saving for, and every last dollar that's in my bank account, I own it outright. If I were to use it for my own purposes, I would have no taxes based on the way that I've invested. In some cases, right? Not every dollar I have is like that. But Roth retirement account, I save for it today. It's tax-free when I take it out. Say I grow that and grow it and grow it and grow it, and I figure out a way to never pull out of it. And my Roth retirement account just grows to the moon. Whatever, imagine some gaudy, huge number that it grows to. In my lifetime, if I were to pull money out of that Roth account and use it, I would have no tax implication, which means I have what's called 100% cost basis. Every last dollar is mine, no taxes. But if they do away with stepped up cost basis, if I take all that time and save all that money in that Roth retirement account, and then I hand it over to my child when I pass away, they get it at zero cost basis, which means every dollar that was in that Roth retirement account becomes theirs, but they're going to be taxed on it. Every dollar. That's not the way it is, but that is what they are talking about. And similar scenarios when they talk about removing stepped up cost basis. And I don't think people understand that a lot of times because they hear these buzzwords thrown around. That one in particular, that's what has the potential to take place. There are other vehicles that would not necessarily be affected by that. Life insurance in particular passes. There's no tax implication, so that's a nice one. But even then, that doesn't cover everything, right? There's always death and taxes, right? But there are ways to position your assets more advantageously, and as with everything, the more money you have, the more plentiful the options become.
Yeah. Nice.
But that's taxes.
No, it's like every person that I have on and we talk about something specific, I'm always like, all right, we talked about the good things about it, the bad things about it. Now let's talk about the government side of that. And then it's like every single time I get the same reaction. Even with like Adam, I just had him on talking about breweries and how the government gets in the way and stuff like that. It's like as soon as you go to government in the industry, everybody goes, oh, like, because it's like, yep, it's there, and there's no way of getting around it.
Yeah. On that note, I will say I just finished reading a book or listening to a book by Thomas Sowell. He's an economist, and it was literally I think he wrote it in like 2010.
Yeah,
and it was talking about the housing boom and bust, and it was like a play-by-play of why the housing crash happened in 2006 to 2008. It's a remarkable book about the
what's the name of it?
Housing Boom and Bust by Thomas Sowell.
Housing Boom and Bust.
I mean, well, that's what they called it, right?
Yeah.
Housing market exploded and then it busted, right?
Yeah.
And that bubble burst. I really like his books. He's got one, Basic Economics, and I've got another one on Libby that I'm going to listen to next. I can't even remember the name of it at the moment.
Yeah.
But really like his works. And on the point of financial literacy, I don't think that we can read enough some days to just better understand and work to better understand how these things affect our lives, because they're going to affect our lives no matter what. It's inevitable. Taxes are happening, inevitable. And understanding what, in particular, the housing book, talking about that market crash in 2006 to 2008, he talked specifically about how the political rhetoric around the crisis and how it all went down, and the retrospect, it's got a perfect view of what happened. He walks it out real plain language, and he talks about why it happened. He talks about what was proposed to do, what they proposed to do to solve the problem, and why it did or did not work, or in some cases caused some things. It's a really interesting book. And I think it would do us far better to be more educated.
Well, history repeats itself, right?
It certainly seems that way.
Yeah. Because, I mean, seems like we run into the same issue. But I think it was one of the Carnegies that said it, or maybe it was somebody else, but it said that it's always easier to maintain wealth than it is to build it.
Sure.
So it's like, I think that's the part where people struggle the most. And the books that I'm more like going towards now, everybody wants to talk about wealth creation, but nobody wants to talk about maintaining it. It wasn't until you came along that I actually started to look at it from that point of view, which was like, okay, instead of talking about creating wealth, how do I maintain what I have right now just to be able to one day create wealth? I think it kind of comes, I don't believe that you should jump straight into like creating all this wealth with investments and stuff like that until you learn how to manage, how to budget, how to do all that stuff. You've kind of put us on track with that, where it was like, hey, I know you're worried about this over here. But this is where you need to be focused on the most. And that's where I feel like our generation fails. I was just listening to a podcast the other day. I don't know if it was Joe Rogan, but they were talking about like the average savings account in the United States right now is like $2,000.
That sounds generous, actually.
That like a lot of people, like that's kind of like, well, I mean, it's the average, so it's based on. So it's like
top and the bottom, yeah.
Yep, the top and the bottom. So $2,000 when you really look at that, and you're like, oh, well, that's all I have in my savings account. It's like, dude, if my AC goes out, that's $8,000.
Oh yeah,
right there. And it's like, oh, and then but everybody goes to that same thing we were talking about earlier. I'll just go to a loan. I'll do a loan and I'll do interest, and as long as I can afford the payments, we're good, right? And then that's how everybody lives their life. They just live it off payments. But when I heard that, I was like, oh yeah, it's $2,000. $2,000 is the average savings account, and I'm like, that goes back into people not knowing how to maintain and manage money.
Yes,
that is not has nothing to do with wealth. Creating wealth. I don't know anything about creating wealth because I haven't created anything yet. But hopefully one day. But right now, I mean, that's kind of like my thing is how do I manage what I have so then I can actually one day actually put my money somewhere where it's gonna be something.
Well, I think there's also a lot to be said that if you don't figure it out here and you find a way to grow all that money, the chances of you keeping it here are just as poor if you didn't.
Well, that's like, one of my mentors from sales, Jack Stewart. That guy, he had told me one Sunday I'd stopped by his house and he was washing his own truck. Millionaire. He washes his own truck, washes his own tires. He's like, does his own, I think at the time he was doing his own landscaping or whatever. And I was like, anything that I know that I can do, I'll never pay for somebody else to do. Now, I've become the opposite person of that now, where it's been like, I'm just going to hire somebody to do it because I don't feel like doing it. It's not worth the hassle to me. But then you look and see how much money I'm spending on it. Like my yard is a perfect example. I have an edger, I have a weed eater, and I have a lawnmower. But I also have a podcast, another business that Nia and I have started, and then of course I got my everyday job.
Yep.
Then I've got the kids. And so then it's like, oh no, I'm just gonna hire somebody to do it. Then I look at how much money that I'm shelling out every month, and I'm going, all right, hold on, it's $75 to fill up my gas tank. It's about that every single time somebody comes over to my house to do the yard.
Right.
And I'm going, I could be saving right there, so then I start looking at that stuff from a different aspect. But I mean, this guy, I remember he also used to have like a styrofoam cup, and he had like coffee out of it every morning, the same styrofoam cup. He never got rid, once he started something, he never got. And so, but also looking at those habits that he had from when he wasn't a millionaire, and he still kept them. And that's the thing that you were just talking about, where it's like, that's why when he did make a certain amount of money, right, he knew what to do with the money because he had already learned the discipline back here on what to do with it. And people aren't learning that back here before they get here. And then the people that are, these YouTube stars, social media gurus that sit there and they like make millions, and then they're sitting there and they'll literally have a portion of their show where they're going somewhere and they're handing out $1 million to somebody.
Right.
And it's like, you're not going to stay a millionaire really very long. It's going to go away soon because you're having to come up with ideas on giving money away so people will watch your show. That should tell you real quick that you're not learning how to manage your money, which means you're not really good at.
Well, that's where the phenomenon of the professional athlete that goes bankrupt 2 years after they retire. Yeah, it's just because you make the money doesn't mean you know how to keep it.
Well, I think it was the funny part of that, right? Like, we were watching. It was a stand-up show. I was out of town. This was a couple years ago. And the guy, he got up there. He was a professional baseball player. I couldn't remember his name, but he's a stand-up comedian now.
Yeah.
And he was like, yeah, I didn't learn anything about money when I was a pro athlete. He was like, when I was a pro athlete, he said, I think it was like the LA Dodgers or something like that. He was like a pitcher for him. And he was like, yeah, they started paying me $680,000 a year, and he wasn't even a whatever. He's like, well, I bought a $400,000 home. Now, this was like in the 80s or 90s. So back then, that was a,
a big house.
Pretty decent house. He goes, and then I had a staff to run the house. He's like, yeah. He goes, well, third season comes along. He throws out his arm, or he had like some type of surgery or whatever. He's no good anymore, but they give you basically like a severance or whatever.
Right.
And so it comes up. He's like, next thing you know, he's like headed somewhere to go have dinner. And the cops show up and they arrest him for like tax evasion or something like that. His guy didn't file his taxes right, or something happened. And then it was like, oh, well, I'll just leverage this and leverage that and all this. And then it was like, no, you can't do that. And it's like, why not? And it's like, because you're broke. And it's like, I'm broke. And they're like, well, actually, you're worse than broke. You're in debt.
You're upside down.
And so they're just kind of like, oh. He goes, well, my house, I bought it for $400,000. And they said, yeah, your staff to run that house each year is close to $450,000. He's like, wait a second, what? And he's like, yeah, you've been paying $450,000 a year for the staff that maintains your $500,000 home. And he's like, that didn't make any sense. I only got 3 people that work for me. And they're like, yeah, that's how much it costs after this, and they start. And he's just kind of like, he's like, wait, hold up. And the next thing you know, he's sitting there going, wait a second, I haven't made that much money. How is that possible? And they're like, that's why we're telling you.
That's why we're here. Oh, man.
It's like, I haven't even made that much money. How am I? And it's like, you haven't been watching any of your stuff like this, like that. He was like, but yeah, I mean, he lost everything. And, but it came from one of those things where he had hired somebody to take care of his money. He wasn't taking care of his money.
That's why you got to know the people that are in your corner and know them and be able to sit eye to eye to them and have that conversation.
Yeah.
Because, like I said, there's plenty of people that have been bad actors over the years and everything else. And I think a good rule of thumb is if the person you're talking to can't explain it such that you can understand it, don't just file it under, oh, they're so smart and I'm so dumb. Recognize that these things can be explained.
No.
You should take the time to find somebody that will take the time to explain it to you. Because if they can't, there might be something under the rug.
Yeah.
Like, you got to know that. Because these things are designed for people.
Yeah.
Right? They're designed for people to understand them.
Yeah.
To be able to use them and utilize them. So, if it sounds too good to be true, probably is.
Yeah. Is there anything you want to talk about that you didn't talk about?
Man.
We hit all over the place, and I tend to make these things about everything but why you're here.
Everything but. No, we hit a lot of the high points.
Yeah.
Ultimately, it just, I think I want to, if I were to wrap it at any point, is that there is hope, right? And it's
for your finances.
There's hope for finances, and there is a avenue to financial success. It may be simpler than you think, but that doesn't mean it's going to be easy. If budgets were the easiest thing in the world, everyone would be millionaires.
Yeah.
But sticking to budgets and doing the discipline has proven to be difficult for a lot of people, and a lot of people are feeling the pain from that.
Yeah.
A lot of people have been put in situations that are beyond their control. It doesn't matter if they had a budget or not.
Mm-hmm.
But the path, regardless of the situation you're in, the path to getting out of the bad situation, whether it's debt or whatever the scenario is, it's going to be the daily disciplines.
Yeah.
Right? And it's going to, in a lot of ways, it's going to be simpler than you might think.
Yeah.
But it's going to be simple over years.
Yeah.
It's not going to be simple over 6 months.
Yeah.
And I think
it's not a get rich quick plan.
Right. And I think the hazards of comparison, like we were talking about with social media and seeing all the good and none of the bad that people want to present, this perfect self, we cannot afford to make that our standard and rely on that. I think a lot of people do that, whether they mean to or not, right? It's not that they're dumb. It's not that they're bad people. It's so easy to see. We like to see it. We like to scroll through and look at it. And we have to keep it grounded in reality.
Mm-hmm.
I work to make things make sense for people.
Yeah.
I like to educate people. I'm a big fan of it because an educated person is a lot more effective and a lot more capable.
Yeah.
And like we were saying earlier, I don't think we're doing the best job of educating either our generation or the next generation. I don't think that, especially when it comes to financial literacy and things of that nature. I think we've lost something. I think we can get it back. And I think all it takes is doing it in our own home. But it's not going to happen by accident.
Yeah.
And
sacrifice.
Oh, goodness.
Well, man, I appreciate having you on. What's the name of the firm?
It's North Florida Financial. I'm sure we can put the link link in the bio. I've got a Facebook page, phone number, all that kind of stuff. As with everything, COVID made us do virtual stuff, so I can do in person. I can meet with people virtually. We've got an office, all that good stuff. But ultimately, let's have a conversation.
Yeah.
Don't make it more than it is.
Mm-hmm.
Let's figure out where you're at and see if there's a way to make it better.
Yeah.
I'm happy to help.
Sweet. You've helped us. And you've helped some of my buddies.
Yeah. Glad to hear it.
Cool, man.
All right,
Appreciate
right
it.
on.